heard of the Nobel Prize? Who's heard of the Ig Nobels? Anyone? Alright, so there's this thing called the Ig Nobel, which is given out for things that are a little bit quirky. Things that the Nobel guys, might turn their nose up at. For example, let's say you invent a bra that has a dual purpose. Maybe that bra can also be used as, I don't know, maybe
recycling container.
A mask. Oh, and not just a mask for you, when something blows up and you need to protect yourself from dust, but a mask for you and somebody nearby, some random stranger who wants to wear your decal. So this year, they gave Ig Nobel Prizes for things like collecting snot from a whale. But they've also given Ig Nobel Prizes for interesting stuff like the Ig Nobel Prize in Medicine, which was won in 2007 by our next speaker, Dan Meyer. He won this Ig Nobel for research into injuries resulting from sword swallowing.
Oh my. Uh-oh.
You can't really swallow a sword without slitting your throat, can you? Can you? But everybody knows sword swallowing is 99% impossible. You can't really do the impossible, right? Well, in my quest to do the impossible in my life, I found there are two main points that they're universal around the world. Everybody has dreams of doing the impossible, and everybody has fears of failure. So I'm going to take you on a couple of impossible journeys tonight. Okay? On October 4th, 2007, my impossible dream came true when I was honored to win the Ig Nobel Prize in Medicine at Harvard for a paper I wrote called Sword Swallowing and Its Side Effects, published in the British Medical Journal. Now I want to take you on another journey. In 1967, this scared, shy, and skinny kid grew up with social anxiety disorder and fears. He had fears of everything: water, heights, snakes, spiders, sharks, doctors, nurses, sharp objects, and speaking before people. He had fear of failure. But this kid, because he was beat up by the bullies and picked on by the bullies, he was determined to do the impossible, do things that the other kids could not do. He wanted to get in Ripley's, believe it or not, or Guinness World Records. His dream was to do the impossible. That scared, shy, skinny kid was me. 10 years later, in India, on my deathbed, suffering from malaria fever in Tiruvannamalai, India, I decided I was not going to let fear rule my life anymore. I made a conscious decision that I was going to take on risks, take on challenges, change my attitude, and do things that were impossible. So, I took a stab at it. 10 years later, I actually, that night I had made a list of thrones or goals or major life goals I wanted to do in my life. I wanted to visit all the major continents, live with a tribe of Indians, work with a circus, climb to the top of the highest mountain in Scandinavia. I wanted to do the impossible. So I took a stab at it. 20 years later, I found out there were less than a dozen sword swallowers left in the world, and I decided I was going to try that. So I practiced for 4 years, 10 to 12 times a day, every day, about 13,000 unsuccessful attempts before I got my first sword down in 2001. Then I networked all the sword swallowers together into the Sword Swallowers Association and did a lot of research, including the sword swallower that you saw up there who had impaled his heart with his sword. Where does the sword really go when you swallow a sword? First, you have to repress the gag reflex in the back of the throat, find the right opening to the epiglottis, slide the blade down the esophagus, repress the paracelsus reflex in the throat, nudge the hardest side, relax lower esophageal sphincter, and slide the blade all the way down into the stomach past the liver and kidneys. That's how you swallow a sword. In 2007, I was honored to be able to swallow a sword underwater in a tank of sharks. A 30-inch sword while surrounded by 88 sharks and stingrays from Ripley's, believe it or not. In 2008, I was honored to be on America's Got Talent from Nashville to Atlanta to Las Vegas semifinals to the finals in Los Angeles, one of the top 50. But it was not the fact that I managed to swallow a sword or win the Ig Nobel Prize or make it on Guinness or Ripley's or America's Got Talent that's incredible. The incredible thing is that a scared, shy, wimpy kid could overcome his fears, overcome his obstacles, and have the guts to stand up here to tell you about it tonight. So what are your dreams? What are your dreams? What are your fears? I bet this was not your dream to do the impossible, was it? If you've got got dreams, if you've got fears, I challenge you to take your chances, do your dreams, take on risks, take on challenges. If you've got fears, overcome those fears. Face your fears, overcome your obstacles, set your goals and thrones, take on risks, change your attitude, and reach for your dreams, and maybe, just maybe, you can do the impossible and change your world. Now, if you see a sword in the future, if you see a table knife, if you're challenged by your own impossible challenge, I want you to think this. Remember that scared, shy, skinny kid, and if he can do the impossible, you can too. This is for those bullies who said it couldn't be done. Thanks for believing in me, and thanks for being a part of